This actor can play any role from a noble Jedi to the leader of the crime syndicate, from drug addict to Catholic priest and even Christ himself. It seems that nothing is impossible for him at all. Throughout his career, he managed to fight with lightsabers, inject heroin, hypnotize goats, dive into the toilet with feces, and save the dog from fire. Meet today's charming hero on Biographer, Ewan McGregor. What sacrifices did he make for the role in Trainspotting? How did he get rid of alcohol addiction? You'll know about these and other interesting details of his career and personal life very soon. And before we move on, click on the subscribe button and bell to learn all the secrets of the Jedi Order and other life stories of your favorite celebrities. Subscribe and let's start. The future Jedi was born on March 31st, 1971 in Crieff, Scotland, in the family of teachers James Charles Stewart McGregor and Carol Diane Lawson. The Ewan family belongs to the famous Old Scottish McGregor clan. Ewan showed creative abilities from early childhood. He first appeared on stage at the age of 4, performing King David in an amateur Sunday school play. Then at the age of 5, Ewan was sent to Morrison's Academy. There he played the role of the Sheriff of Nottingham in a student play, because he was the only one in class who could pronounce the name of his character. Ewan was not particularly successful in his studies. The boy was much more interested in music. He was a member of the school orchestra playing the horn and drums. Ewan dreamed of an acting career from the age of 9. He adored the old black and white films of the 30s, and when he went to the theater with his parents, he invariably fell in love with the actresses who played on stage. His passion for stage was also influenced by his uncle, actor and director Denis Lawson, best known for his role as pilot Wedge Antilles in Star Wars. If you took my uncle out of the equation, I don't know if I'd ever thought to become an actor. I'd have been a baker or something. Lawson frequently came from London to visit the McGregor family. He had long hair, beads, and a sheepskin vest, Ewan recalled. The future actor aspired to be as cool and impressive as his uncle. All school years, Ewan was in the shadow of his older brother. Colin studied brilliantly, was the head boy of the school and the captain of the school sports teams. Ewan was burdened by the fact that his brother was much more successful. Meanwhile, his interest in studies completely disappeared. In 1987, when he was 16, his mother allowed him to leave school and follow his dreams. Ewan went to Perth, where he tried to get a job in the troupe of the local repertory theater. Since he had no experience, he was refused. However, the guy managed to get the role of an extra in one of the productions. Then he was still hired in the theater, but not as an actor, but as a stage worker. McGregor studied drama at Kirkcaldy in Fife for a year and then enrolled at London's Guildhall School of Music and Drama for a 3-year course. There, he studied alongside Daniel Craig and Alistair McGowan, and left school just before graduation after being cast as Private Mick Hopper in Dennis Potter's 6-part Channel 4 series Lipstick on Your Collar. In the same year, he also starred in the British television miniseries Scarlet and Black. In 1994, Human Being premiered, starring Robin Williams. For Ewan, that was his debut on the big screen. After that, the aspiring actor appeared in the BBC television film Doggin' Around, and then played the role of a drug dealer in the movie Blue Juice, where Catherine Zeta-Jones and Sean Pertwee were his partners on the set. Ewan's first prominent film role was as cynical conman Alex Law in the low-budget but critically acclaimed thriller Shallow Grave. That role allowed him to become one of the most promising actors in the UK. In addition, he received his first award, which was presented to him by Empire magazine. The film marked the beginning of a very successful collaboration between the actor and the creative team of Danny Boyle, John Hodge, and Andrew McDonald. Within 2 years, their new joint project became so successful that it was recognized by many critics as one of the best films of the 90s. McGregor himself, early in his career, was lucky enough to be on the red carpet of prestigious film festivals and prove to everyone how promising he was.
Choose life, choose a job, choose a career, choose a family.
Trainspotting is a highly social film about the life of a company of junkies based on the acclaimed novel of the same name by Irvin Welsh. The filmmakers let McGregor read the script, but they did it with the air that he had absolutely no chance of getting the part. The fact was, the director doubted whether a handsome guy with the appearance of a hero lover whose agent considered him the new Mr. Darcy could play the role of an exhausted drug addict. Therefore, Boyle decided to test the actor to see if he was really interested in the project and how far he was willing to go for it. After reading the script, the actor's first thought was, "I need to play this role," and McGregor was determined to prove himself worthy of it. Going to the shooting of his other project, The Pillow Book, he simultaneously took up weight loss. His diet included avoiding beer, dairy products, and any stimulants. Parting with beer was especially difficult for him because at that time McGregor drank like hell. The actor recalled that in his 20s he was a maniac on booze and a functioning alcoholic. The diet helped him lose as much as 26 pounds in 2 months. "I grilled everything, stopped drinking beer, drank lots of gin instead, and the weight just fucking fell off." Part of the filming took place in Luxembourg, and on weekends, Ewan did research for a next role. He found a large number of urban drug addicts near the railway station and observed their lives for some time. Some habits he borrowed from one of those people. "The hunch pose I took for Renton is the exact copy of the guy from Luxembourg," McGregor recalled. When the actor came back to McDonald, Hodge, and Boyle, they did not recognize the man that they had just talked to. Renton appearing, he was f***ing Renton. He was as skinny as fuck. The actor was finally offered the role. Rejoicing, he left the meeting, but after a while, he returned with hastily shaved off hair. Boyle just couldn't believe it. He had shaved off all his hair. Not a George Clooney cool and attractive crop, but a fucking brutal, down-to-the-skin shave that obviously looked like he'd done it himself. It shows you how committed he was, but his agent at the time must have been fucking livid. Before filming began, Boyle showed his actors A Clockwork Orange, The Hustler, and The Exorcist to get them into the spirit of youthful rebellion. In addition, all the actors were taught how to take drugs.
We worked with those guys, and we had like a drug. We had Eamon was his name. He was our drug advisor. So during the rehearsal period, he lined us all up at this table, and we were all given all the things we would need to cook up a shot of heroin, like a little cigarette lighter and a spoon and some matches and bicarb of soda and some pretend heroin. And he did it, like he demonstrated how you would do it. And then he would walk up and down the line as we were all trying to do it. And he'd like, no, more bicarb, and that's not enough heroin. And you'd soak it through, he was giving us like it was so funny.
One of the most important components of the film was the color scheme. Almost all drug scenes took place against a red background. Green symbolized healing, and blue meant the transitional space and state. Hospital, corridor, water in which Renton swims after diving into the toilet. By the way, the worst toilet in Scotland was actually smeared with chocolate. Although the view was terrible, it smelled incredibly delicious. Danny Boyle's film was nominated for an Oscar for Best Adapted Screenplay and won a BAFTA award in the same category. McGregor himself received a BAFTA Scotland Award for Best Actor and was named British Actor of the Year at the London Critics Circle Film Awards. The British Film Institute ranked the film 10th on their list of the 100 best British films of the 20th century. In 2004, the film was recognized as the best Scottish film of all time in a public poll. In any selection of Ewan McGregor's best films, Trainspotting is sure to take first place. By the way, what are your favorite films with his participation? Be sure to write the names of these films in the comments. You need to understand that not only Trainspotting, but also the image of McGregor's character itself was becoming a cult. The appearance in popular culture of a thin guy, emaciated, wet, was on the peak of the popularity of heroin chic fashion. So Renton became as prominent a representative of that period as Kate Moss or Marla from Fight Club. I was lucky because Trainspotting became the movie of an era. And while I always wanted to be a worthy actor, at the same time, there was a part of me that wanted to be a rock star. And I think the lines got slightly blurred. Shortly after the premiere, Ewan married French production designer Yves Mavrikis, whom he met on the set of the TV series Kavanaugh QC. I did a lot of the initial chasing, and we both then chased each other around London for a while. According to the actor, he had many women before Eve, but she became the one who taught him to be a family man. That union had long been considered one of the strongest in Hollywood. After the wedding, Ewan went to the shooting of the film Emma, where he played a minor role. In the same year, the dramedy Brassed Off was released, where McGregor played the central character. The film received good reviews and was subsequently ranked 85th on the British Film Institute's list of the 100 best British films. 1996 gave Ewan and Eve their first daughter, Clara. A year later, the baby became very ill with meningitis and was practically on the verge of death. Ewan had to urgently return home from Los Angeles, where he was working at the time, and significantly reduce his schedule. Fortunately, his daughter recovered, and the actor realized how much his family means to him. "Something crazy came out of me," Ewan admitted. With the appearance of the family in his life, everything changed beyond recognition. Gradually, the wild parties and rebellious antics ended, although the love of adventure remains with him to this day. The next couple of years, Ewan starred mainly in independent films, experimenting with different genres. In 1997, several films with his participation were released at once. First, the horror film Night Watch. Next was the drama The Serpent's Kiss, which marked the beginning of McGregor's friendship with Charlie Boorman. In a couple of years, they went on a round-the-world trip on motorcycles, but we're going to talk about that later. Also, in 1997, the actor played the role of Duncan Stewart in one of the episodes of the famous television series ER. Thanks to his role, he was nominated for the prestigious Primetime Emmy Awards for Outstanding Guest Star. McGregor then reunited for the third time with Danny Boyle in his black comedy A Life Less Ordinary. Unfortunately, the film was not as successful as its predecessor and received mixed reviews. At the same time, the picture became a breakthrough for both Boyle and Ewan McGregor. Both established themselves in Hollywood. However, a few years later, the unexpected happened. Something went wrong between Boyle and McGregor. Under pressure from the studio, Boyle had to call the more famous actor Leonardo DiCaprio for the lead role in his next project, The Beach. With the Titanic star, Boyle was able to get the $50 million he needed to earn. That hurt McGregor so much that he didn't speak to the director for years. We managed to leave our mark on the history of British cinema, you know? That means a lot. He is my director and I am his actor. I was ready to star in any project with him. And could not he understand why he suddenly destroyed our friendship? Once, they both were at a first-class cabin on a flight across the Atlantic without exchanging a single word. They reconciled only before the filming of T2 Trainspotting. But back to 1997. Then together with Jude Law and Sadie Frost, Ewan co-founded the British film and theater company Natural Nylon. He had known Law for a long time and even rented an apartment together for some time. The first film made by Natural Nylon was in 1999. Then there were several more films and productions, but already in 2002, Ewan left the project due to the heavy workload in cinema. In 1998, McGregor was able to make his childhood dreams come true and became a rock star for a moment. However, it was not for real, but on the set of the film Velvet Goldmine. The actor played a depraved glam rock star based heavily on Iggy Pop and Lou Reed. Critics noted the similarity of McGregor's character with Kurt Cobain, although the film's director assured that it happened accidentally. The creators insisted that the hero had nothing in common with the performer except for appearance. The story draws heavily on David Bowie's relationship with Reed and Pop in the 70s and 80s. The film was originally supposed to feature some of Bowie's music, hence the film's title was taken from his song. However, after looking at the script, Bowie rejected it, since the plot was partly based on biographical books that were not agreed with the artist. Therefore, the script had to be partially rewritten. The film vividly showed the atmosphere of the birth area of glam rock, for which it was nominated for the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival and won the award for the Best Artistic Contribution. After the release, McGregor was invited to an event where Iggy Pop performed. After the concert, the actor went into the dressing room hoping to chat with the musician. However, disappointment awaited him. Pop didn't watch the film and didn't know McGregor. There, a funny incident happened. A drunken actor danced in the image of Iggy Pop in front of Iggy Pop himself. The musician liked the parody, but McGregor felt embarrassed by his act and hurried to leave the dressing room. Ewan continued the musical theme in his next project in 1998. The musical film Little Voice, based on the play The Rise and Fall of the Little Voice, received 6 BAFTA nominations, 2 Golden Globe nominations, and a number of other awards. Basically, the films in which Ewan was shot all that time didn't have exorbitant budgets and were aimed at a narrow audience, connoisseurs of festival cinema. But in 1999, everything changed when McGregor got a role in a multi-million-dollar blockbuster. He was recognized in Hollywood, and his character was loved by millions of viewers.
Meet Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Hi. You're a Jedi too? Pleased to meet you.
In early drafts of the script, Obi-Wan Kenobi had to be a fully trained Jedi from the beginning of the film, not a Padawan learner, and the only Jedi negotiator sent to Naboo. Qui-Gon Jinn, in turn, was not introduced until the main characters reached Coruscant and was originally the same age as Obi-Wan. However, later Lucas changed his mind, and that was perhaps even for the better, because the director gave the viewer the opportunity to observe the development of Obi-Wan over the course of 3 films. Before our eyes, the iconic character of the original trilogy went from a young Padawan to a wise mentor and one of the key participants in the Clone Wars. McGregor himself doubted for a long time whether he would be suitable for that role. He was wary of the responsibility that was placed on anyone who joined such a massive franchise, and even more for those who had to play the role of an already famous character. The reason for the doubt was also that he mostly acted in independent films. Initially, I was quite skeptical about doing it. I just thought, well, I'm this independent, urban-y, grungy actor over here. I'm not this kind of guy. And yet, the temptation to become part of a cult franchise turned out to be stronger than fear. After all, the first film that Ewan saw in the cinema was Star Wars Episode IV: A New Hope.
The first movie I ever saw in the cinema could possibly have been Star Wars Episode IV. And I went to see it with my brother, and we were going to see it mainly because my uncle was in it. My mum's brother played Wedge in episodes 4, 5, and 6.
Good shot, Red 2.
And then we sat down just excited to see Uncle Dennis.
Look at the size of that thing.
And then we got Star Wars as well, which blew us completely away.
McGregor said that at the time of the start of filming, he literally was obsessed with the dream of buying a motorcycle. The actor even begged for money from the film studio in advance to pay off. As a result, George Lucas could not stand it and gave McGregor a motorcycle so that he wouldn't be distracted from the work process. And the result was worth it. In preparation for his role, McGregor worked hard to get the soothing tones and intonations of Sir Alec Guinness. If you carefully look at the 5th part and then from the 1st to the 3rd, you can see that Ewan tried to repeat the most noticeable gestures of his predecessor.
And yet he created this iconic figure that I've grown up knowing.
You must do what you feel is right, of course.
Many people know the story of how McGregor, during filming, involuntarily made sounds of a lightsaber during a duel. George Lucas explained many times that the sound effects would be added later by the special effects team. Ewan shyly explained that he got carried away. But let's put ourselves in his place. I'm sure many Star Wars fans were even crazier.
No, it wasn't. To begin with, it was quite difficult not to make the sound.
Yeah.
And also when it goes away, because it makes that nice noise when it goes down.
Ewan McGregor once stated that before filming began, he and Liam Neeson were taken to a private room where 2 Lucasfilm employees approached them with a long, locked wooden box. When opened, they saw 20 various lightsaber hilts that they were being allowed to choose from to be their character's official weapon for the movie. Ewan then went on to explain that George Lucas only wanted to allow them a rushed 10 minutes to decide on which design they wanted, because George believed the actors should connect with their hilts through feeling and not through study.
I've been waiting for this for weeks. I've been thinking, every morning I say, I wonder if it's today I'll get to choose.
Jedi robes have adopted the classic look from the original films. Obi-Wan's costume was based on the costume worn by Alec Guinness in A New Hope.
God, I used to fantasize about things like this as a kid. Yeah, I am, huh?
The Phantom Menace received mixed reviews and created a storm of controversy among fans. Critics and audiences alike lashed out at everything from the awkward Jar Jar Binks to the clumsy dialogue and midichlorians that went against the original image of the Force. George Lucas wanted to do something very different with the prequels. That's why people felt cheated. It was upsetting when people would laugh and joke about it. Now, many years later, the prequels meant a lot to the generation that were kids then. So from smirking, cynical opinions, now I'm getting feedback from the kids that they were made for. I'm really happy about that. Criticism was especially difficult for the young actors, including Ewan. Although his character ended up being loved by even the most skeptical fans, he was worried sick over the flurry of negativity that fell on the film. I found it quite hard. For it to come out and get knocked so hard was personally quite difficult to deal with. And also, it was quite early in my career. I didn't really know how to deal with that, and I'd only been involved with things that just didn't make much of a ripple. But that's different when making something that makes a negative ripple. On the other hand, many fans and critics agreed that the epic battle scene between Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and Darth Maul, which presented amazing choreography and spectacularity, was the best lightsaber battle in the entire saga. Despite mixed reviews, The Phantom Menace was the most successful film of 1999 and received several technical Oscar nominations. Ewan was nominated for a Saturn Award for Best Supporting Actor. The sequel, subtitled Attack of the Clones, was released in 2002. The action took place 10 years after the events in the first episode, and that time Obi-Wan was the main character of the story along with his student Anakin. The film was shot at the same venues as Baz Luhrmann's 2001 musical Moulin Rouge, where Ewan McGregor starred too. It was very symbolic that Anakin and Obi-Wan used the call signs Red 5 and Red Leader respectively during the opening battle in the script and later on the figures. Well, the Red 5 was also Luke Skywalker's call sign during the Battle of the Death Star in Star Wars Episode IV: A New Hope. Red Leader was the call sign of Wedge Antilles during the battle for the Death Star in Star Wars Episode VI: Return of the Jedi. As we remember, Wedge was played by Ewan's uncle Dennis Lawson. Like its predecessor, the film received mixed reviews and was never able to surpass The Phantom Menace in terms of fees. And for the first time, a Star Wars movie didn't become the best-selling movie of the year. He was overtaken at the box office by Spider-Man and The Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers. Attack of the Clones was nominated for an Oscar for Best Visual Effects, but not without a Golden Raspberry. The film received as many as 6 nominations. Immediately after finishing work on the film, Ewan McGregor went to the shooting of Black Hawk Down, for which he had to be clean-shaven and cut short. When filming a few scenes for Star Wars, the actor had to wear a fake beard and wig. These scenes are easy to distinguish. There is the conversation between Obi-Wan and Anakin in an elevator, an exchange of opinions about the changeling at the Outlander Club, a conversation in the Jedi Temple between Obi-Wan, Mace, and Yoda, and his interrogation by Count Dooku among them.
As you see, my Jedi powers are far beyond yours. Now, back down.
The third episode of Star Wars was released in 2005 and, lo and behold, received positive reviews and was considered the best compared to the first 2 prequel films. Critics and fans especially emphasized the final scene of the battle between Obi-Wan and Anakin. In order for the fight to turn out perfect, the actors trained for more than 2 months. As a result, they could fence at the same speed as the duel on the screen. Before filming The Phantom Menace, I trained all day, but now I seem to have reached my limit. Lucas had always envisioned the final duel between Anakin and Obi-Wan against the backdrop of red-hot lava, and now he was finally able to bring to the screen scenes that had been living in his imagination for 30 years. By the way, his old friend Steven Spielberg helped him with the production of the animatronics of that and several other key scenes. The history of the prequels had come to its logical conclusion, and a new stage has begun in the creative life of Ewan McGregor. Let's go back a few years to 2001. As fans continued to argue about every detail of the first Star Wars episode and waited for more, Ewan celebrated the birth of his second daughter, Esther. McGregor took fatherhood seriously, without dumping all the responsibilities on his wife. He tried to spend more time with them to find a common language with each of his daughters, taking into account the character and interests. He believes that a father should establish a deep connection with his children from a very young age, and not just act as a figurehead. Sure, sometimes it gets boring to play with little kids, telling the same story over and over again, for example, but the secret is simple. If you decide to play with your children, then play with them. If you should not look through the papers on your desk or be distracted by the computer, even if you play with them for a short time, it will mean a lot to you and to them. McGregor and Mavrikis also have 2 adopted daughters. Ewan met Jamyan during his trip to Mongolia and was so fascinated by her that he proposed to his wife to adopt her in 2006. Anouk became part of the family in 2011. Between the filming of the first and second episodes of Star Wars, several little-known works of the actor was released. The crime drama Rogue Trader, which failed at the box office, and the mystery thriller film Eye of the Beholder. Slightly more successful was the drama Nora, for which Ewan was nominated for the Irish Film and Television Awards. In 2001, he again had the opportunity to show his love for singing in the musical Moulin Rouge. In Baz Luhrmann's film, McGregor was given the role of the poor romantic poet Christian, madly in love with the beautiful courtesan Satin, played by Nicole Kidman. As a result, that amazing film received more than 60 awards and nominations, was recognized as a classic of the film musical, and helped to revive that forgotten film genre. And a huge number of women fell in love with a charming Scottish actor, who was nominated for a Golden Globe for his role.
It's an assault on the senses, everything about it. It's quite unlike anything I've ever done or seen. I was looking at the monitor at the end of the day and I thought, that's me in the middle, look, with Nicole Kidman, and I'm from Crieff in Scotland, and look at that.
Initially, Leonardo DiCaprio was considered for the role of Christian, but he didn't fit the voice. McGregor was probably glad when he found out about that, but these are just our guesses. Then, Heath Ledger wanted to get the role, but the director eventually gave preference to Ewan. Work on the film began with a small conflict. McGregor had to defend the right to his hobby. The actor is known as an avid motorcyclist. Luhrmann was against the actor risking his health and appearance during filming, but McGregor demanded from the director to allow him to ride. According to the actor, the 8-month ban was completely ridiculous, and he needed a motorcycle like someone needed music. The actor was persuasive enough that Luhrmann conceded to him, despite the fact that McGregor unnerved the entire team by going into the wilderness during breaks. Both McGregor and Kidman performed all of their own vocals.
The singing, I just remember you having this exquisite voice and me going, I am never going to be able to hit these notes.
No,
and I was sort of being, get in the room, practice, Nicole, come on, and you would sort of come in and...
No, that's
not true. Yes, it's true.
No, we were all in the same boat there.
You were so much better than...
By the way, from a young age, McGregor loves to write stories and poems, and some of his works were used in the musical. By the time of work on Moulin Rouge, McGregor had finally quit drinking and smoking.
And then we'd have great parties.
Yeah.
Remember those Friday nights or Saturday nights?
Not all of them.
No.
Don't remember all of them.
Exactly.
But no, it was...
Anyway, we had some pretty wild nights. I remember absinthe being passed out at one point and me going, is this safe?
Yeah.
I was so sort of naive. And then going, I suppose it is.
It's okay now.
I just couldn't fit it in, he said. I had a family and a career, and there just wasn't the time to drink as well. It's not that big of a deal. In England, we think it's funny that we drink a lot. It's a badge of honor, and I think that's pathetic, really. Giving up alcohol was not easy for McGregor, but he managed. The actor said that he first worked with a therapist who specialized in alcohol addiction, and then moved to Alcoholics Anonymous. In 2003, McGregor appeared in the romantic comedy Down with Love, where Renee Zellweger became his partner. The film was kind of a stylization of the American sex comedies without sex of the early 1960s. All the scenery, costumes, camera work, and even the opening credits repeated the style of old comedies. Time film critic Richard Corliss wrote that Down with Love is so clogged with specific references to a half-dozen rock and Doris-type comedies that it serves as the definitive distillation of the genre. McGregor also showed his vocal abilities here, performing the final song of the film with Zellweger. The actor often admitted that he liked negative characters more. In addition, he was attracted to low-budget films. Therefore, it's not surprising that he took the part in David Mackenzie's dark, erotic drama Young Adam. The main character, Joe, worked on a barge. Once he wanted to be a writer, but his dreams were in the past. He destroyed both his own life and the lives of those around him. He entered into promiscuity without thinking about the consequences and often acted cruelly. The director tried to convey the gloomy atmosphere in the film as accurately as possible. Many characters look deliberately ugly, and the sex scenes are as naturalistic as possible. McGregor, in turn, did everything possible to realize the director's intention. Perhaps that was one of his best, most underestimated roles. For realism, McGregor not only undressed but also insisted that one moment which was first cut from the film be returned there. The actor really was quite often naked from the very beginning of his career, and it seemed he never felt very embarrassed. Once, he told a funny story that happened to him when he starred in What the Butler Saw by Joe Orton in a Tweedy Theater in Salisbury. The script called for him to stand naked from behind the couch, grab a police helmet to cover himself, and race across the stage. One day, I let the helmet go, just for effect, and there was this gasp. It was a matinee and the whole Blue Rinse Brigade was there. I loved it. I felt very powerful in that moment. So, I kept doing it. But one day, someone spilt water on the stage and I slipped and landed on my back. I was sliding with my legs up, arse first, into the front row. In the same 2003, Tim Burton's fantasy drama Big Fish was released. The film tells the story of a dying man, Edward Bloom, and his disillusioned son who struggles to distinguish truth from fiction and his father's crazy stories. McGregor got the main role, a young version of the protagonist. The actor said that he was attracted not only by the script, but also by the theme itself. In addition, he calls himself a fan of Tim Burton. The producers offered Burton McGregor's candidacy in part because of his resemblance to the performer of the role of his older version, Albert Finney. They found an article in People magazine comparing the two actors. Producer Bruce Cohen recalled, "There it was, the same smile, the same dimple, the same sparkle in the eyes. They looked eerily and brilliantly alike." Burton was pleased with the work with McGregor. According to him, the actor is as professional as Johnny Depp. Ewan is a great artist, on par with Johnny. I love him for his talent and fearlessness. I love actors who are ready to play anything, not sticking out their own person. They say, "How will I look here?" People like Ewan just get down to business without further ado, and there is a certain inner freedom to this, which is impossible not to admire. According to Tim, when you work with Ewan, it feels like you're making a new film every day, which is very cool. That was why Burton easily entrusted the actor with the role in a rather personal film, the idea of which came from the director after the death of his father. In that way, he shared his reflections on the relationship between father and son. The director recalled how McGregor impressed him on the set of the scene of rescuing a dog from a fire. Not only were the conditions unsafe, but the animal was also frightened. However, that didn't stop the actor from working to the limit of his abilities. Tim Burton's most romantic and sentimental film received positive reviews from critics and was nominated for many prestigious awards. McGregor was also pleased with his role. In his opinion, so many events happened to the character that would be enough for a dozen films. In 2004, the passion for motorcycles inspired the actor on a long and difficult journey. Together with his friend Charlie Borman, the actor set on an almost unrealistic task to travel more than 30,000 kilometers and 12 countries in 15 weeks. Their plans were to cross Eastern Europe, Russia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Mongolia on motorcycles, and then, having crossed the Bering Strait, continue their journey through Alaska, Canada, and the USA. The race started in London and finished in New York. The task was not easy for the friends. A whole team called Ewan and Charlie's Angels was put together to help them plan the itinerary, arrange visas, and make the necessary reservations. In addition, it was necessary to prepare physically, get vaccinated, and learn languages. Moreover, former SAS Major Jamie Lothar Pinkerton was hired to train for survival in hostile and dangerous environments, such as unauthorized checkpoints. Friends were dissuaded from the idea in every way possible, convincing them of the absurdity of the idea. However, McGregor and Borman stood their ground, and at the same time, they decided to shoot a documentary series about the trip. The cameraman, also on a motorcycle, went with the actors. In addition, they were insured by 2 cars driving behind at a great distance. The team included producers and a doctor. On the way, they faced dangers and were injured more than once. For example, they were attacked by insects. McGregor got a bump on half a forehead. Downed in the mud with motorcycles, they ate bull eggs in Mongolia, more precisely, they tried painfully. The perilous journey was immortalized in the documentary Long Way Round. It would seem that after all these impressions, the actor had enough for the rest of his life ahead, but no. Already in 2007, in the company of Berman, Ewan set off on a new journey and traveled through 18 countries in Europe and Africa. You can learn about their adventures from the documentary Long Way Down. After 4 months of wandering, Ewan took a short break from filming to compensate his family for his long absence. In 2005, 2 cartoons, Robots and Valiant, were released, voiced by the actor. His next film was The Island by Michael Bay, which was not very well received by critics and became a box office bomb. However, Ewan was interested in returning to the set of a major blockbuster for a change. I liked that film. I think it was unfortunate. It was time to knock him, Michael, and it was unfortunate that I was in the film that he made then when it was his time to be knocked. I think probably it wasn't the most knockable film that he's made, you know? I thought it was alright. I thought it was quite good. It seemed to be that time. The actor said that there's something quite fun about being on those big sets, and certainly some of them working with great people. The Island was the first in a string of films starring McGregor that failed to impress critics and were not particularly successful at the box office. Among them were Stormbreaker, Miss Potter, and Scenes of a Sexual Nature. Working with Woody Allen in the film Cassandra's Dream, contrary to all hopes, did not bring Ewan positive reviews either. Film critics Robbie Collin and Tim Roby rated it as one of Allen's worst films. The follow-up drama Incendiary and the erotic thriller Deception got average reviews from critics. McGregor himself is philosophical about the box office failures of his films, saying that he would never draw a graph of his career. On the vertical axis, you could have box office or personal satisfaction, and whenever you start thinking about that, you never feel on top. There were films that were never seen by anyone but were still important. Everything is a stepping stone. I'm sure my agents would be able to tell you exactly where I am on that graph, but I'm not sure that I want to know really. The main thing is what's next, the future. The mystical thriller Angels and Demons, the sequel to the acclaimed The Da Vinci Code, was more successful in all respects. Ewan had the opportunity to work with director Ron Howard and Tom Hanks. The actor played a minor but memorable role as Father Patrick McKenna.
Holy Father, when I was young, you told me the voice in my heart was God's voice. You said I should follow it no matter how painful. Forgive me. Please, give me strength.
It must be said that McGregor himself was an unbeliever, but he agreed to play the role because he wanted to star in Howard's film. The choice was so influenced by the actor's love for difficult characters with a double bottom. My hero wants to save the church. It seems to him that it has become too liberal, and being a religious person, he still believes very much in his church, and he will do anything to save her. So it was fun to play him. A priest who was present at the shooting helped to get used to the role for McGregor. While some viewers found the film to be anti-Catholic, McGregor disagreed. He repeatedly stated that he would not act if there was at least some hints of disrespect for Catholics. Moreover, he generally didn't approve films directed against anything. He changed from a priest's cassock to a prisoner's jumpsuit. In the same year, in the company of Jim Carrey, Ewan agreed in the biographical black comedy I Love You, Philip Morris. The film is based on the true story of con man and multiple prison fugitive Stephen J. Russell, played by Jim Carrey. McGregor played the role of Philip Morris, who was Russell's cellmate with whom he fell in love.
Why do I never learn? Why did I listen to you, you son of a bitch?
Interestingly, some of the scenes were filmed in a real prison, and almost all the extras were real prisoners. To prepare for the role, McGregor even managed to meet the real Philip Morris. They spent a day and a half together, just driving around the city and hanging out. I was never going to do an impersonation of him. Because it's a script, some of the details are romanticized, obviously. So it wasn't like I was trying to find out, the truth about this and the truth about that. Just being with Philip was enough. He's quite a hard man in a way. He had an edge. He spent 9 more years in prison, and that can't help leave its mark on somebody. The film received fairly positive reviews, although mostly our laurels from critics went to Carrey. In the same 2009, the black comedy The Men Who Stare at Goats, based on the book of the same name by John Ronson and Amelia, was released. It was a biopic about the life of Amelia Earhart. McGregor's next work was very successful and marked a bright streak in his career. In 2010, the world saw Roman Polanski's political thriller The Ghostwriter. The film, based on the book The Ghost, revealed about a writer who was hired to write a biography of a former British Prime Minister. McGregor got the lead role. The fact of playing a leading role like this, there is that pressure of carrying the film. But at the same time, it's kind of the pressure you look for all your life. When you read a leading role like this, they come along every once in a while and they're amazing parts. The pressure becomes a pleasure. When you get the privilege of working alongside Roman Polanski every day for what was 4 months almost, I think, you're in good hands. Polanski was an ambiguous figure. Since 1978, he could not leave Europe because in the States, a prison cell was waiting for him for sexual intercourse with a minor. Therefore, although the film took place in America, the shooting was carried out in Europe. In 2009, Polanski was detained in Switzerland, but the post-production process continued without interruption. The director continued to work on the film and finished editing the footage in a Swiss prison. The film did well at the box office and was a critical success, winning numerous cinematic awards. In addition, in 2010, McGregor played a supporting role in the fantasy comedy Nanny McPhee and The Big Bang, and voiced the main character in the puppet satirical action comedy Jackboots on Whitehall. The romantic comedy of the same year called Beginners received positive reviews from critics and was nominated for the Independent Spirit Awards for Best Director and Best Screenplay. Variety called the film deeply poignant and disarmingly personal. The following year gave us perhaps one of Ewan's most sensual and romantic film works, Perfect Sense, where the actor played along with the brilliant Ava Green.
I go there to feel guilty, you know. I thought I'd feel guilty for the rest of my life, but actually it's starting to fade.
According to the plot, their heroes meet each other at a time when a terrible epidemic is raging on the planet. People lose their feelings one by one. First, the sense of smell disappears, then the taste, and each loss is preceded by an attack of extreme frustration, crippling grief, mad hunger, or violent rage. In this world, the heroes have to endure many hardships and finally understand what really matters in their lives. Someone I know saw it in London recently and was fine until half an hour later when she got the tube home, when she just broke down crying. But I didn't see it as the end of the world at all. When I read the script, I felt it was a really nicely written love story and the backdrop was a metaphor for falling in love. On the set of this film, Ewan first played with his uncle Dennis Lawson, which was very symbolic because it was Lawson who inspired him to become an actor. In the same year, Ewan narrated a documentary film about the Grand Prix motorcycle, Fastest. The action film Haywire by Steven Soderbergh, the romantic comedy drama Salmon Fishing in the Yemen, and The Impossible, based on real events, had positive reviews. The last two brought him nominations for prestigious awards. McGregor is a very productive actor, but once he even thought about how to work less, taking a cue from Daniel Day-Lewis. I think it'd be cool to do what he does and make just one amazing film every 5 years, but I just couldn't do it. There's no way. I like to work too much, and I've got a family to support. When you make smaller films, you don't make the kind of money where you can take years off. In 2012, he became the jury of the 65th Cannes Film Festival. In April of the same year, Ewan participated in the BBC documentary Ewan McGregor: Cold Chain Mission. As a UNICEF ambassador, the actor traveled to Nepal, India, and the Republic of the Congo to deliver the vaccine to children. McGregor has been a UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador since 2004 and is quite active in philanthropy. During his travels, which were presented in the films Long Way Down and Long Way Round, he, along with Charlie Borman, promoted UNICEF humanitarian projects in Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Mongolia, and Africa. McGregor also hosted the annual Go Campaign Hollywood Gala in 2009 and 2010. He also worked with the Scottish Children's Hospice Association. Thanks to the good deeds and success in his career, he received the title of Commander of the Order of the British Empire. In 2013, Ewan tried on knightly armor, starring in a fantasy adventure film directed by Bryan Singer, Jack the Giant Slayer.
Am I dead?
Not just yet.
The same year, August, Osage County, a tragic comedy based on the Pulitzer Prize-winning play was released. Unlike the original, the film received less positive reviews from critics, but for Ewan, that participation was valuable because he got the opportunity to work with a huge number of first-class actors. Among them were Meryl Streep, Julia Roberts, Chris Cooper, Margot Martindale, Benedict Cumberbatch, and others. In 2014, he got a cameo in the Western comedy A Million Ways to Die in the West and starred in the crime thriller Son of a Gun. After that, the actor played a slightly naive inspector in the action comedy Mordecai. The film had a star cast in the form of Johnny Depp, Gwyneth Paltrow, Paul Bettany, and of course, the protagonist Chic Mustache. Bright scenery and twisted detective story. It would seem what could go wrong. However, Mordecai failed miserably at the box office and received appallingly bad reviews. Christopher Rosen of the Huffington Post said that Mordecai seems destined to be rated as the worst film of 2015, and deservedly so.
I do recall a vague memory of her having once, involuntarily one would hope, releasing a fart of such frightening power and timber.
One thing pleases. Ewan at least bypassed the Golden Raspberry nomination, unlike Paltrow, Depp, and his mustache. McGregor has repeatedly proved that he is able to play in films that are completely different in tone and content, but it won't be true if we say that difficult roles never frightened him. Having received an invitation to star in the drama film Last Days in the Desert by Rodrigo Garcia, the actor thought for a long time about whether he was ready to take part in it or not. Not surprisingly, since the story is based on the biblical account of Jesus being tempted by the devil during a 40-day fast in the wilderness. McGregor was supposed to get a double role of Christ and the devil. However, the concise, deep script and the actor's dream to work with Oscar-winning cameraman Emmanuel Lubezki did their job. The actor revealed the duality of Yeshua, Jesus, and tried to focus on the human aspects of his character. I felt actually the pressure come off myself. I'm not playing Jesus, I'm playing a man whose dad is God and he's trying to speak to his dad. It's really a film about the relationship between fathers and their sons. In every scene of the film, that's at the heart of it. In the same year, the biographical drama film Miles Ahead premiered with his directorial debut of Don Cheadle. McGregor played a music reporter who, by the will of fate, was involved in the trouble along with jazz musician Miles Davis. And at the end of the year, Ewan delighted all the fans of Obi-Wan Kenobi. He appeared in Star Wars The Force Awakens as the voice of Kenobi, calling out to Rey and her visions caused by the Force. In the next film, Jane Got a Gun, Ewan played the antagonist, the leader of a criminal gang. Unfortunately, the Western failed at the box office. The spy thriller Our Kind of Traitor that followed was more successful in terms of box office and critical acclaim. For a long time, McGregor thought about trying his hand as a director, so when he was offered to shoot American Pastoral, the actor happily agreed. The film was based on the 1997 Pulitzer Prize-winning novel of the same name by Philip Roth. The first experience in the director's role was not easy on Ewan. There is a responsibility to it that I didn't take lightly. I'm serious about my work. I took it very seriously. There was a lot of money at stake. There was reputation at stake, my own. I was going to be standing in front of a professional film crew and professional actors, all of whom I admire. I didn't want to fail, to mess it up and make a crap film. I woke up to that responsibility heavily every morning. However, many experienced people helped the aspiring director with advice, including Danny Boyle, with whom McGregor's relationship had improved by that time. The story revolved around family man and hardworking businessman Seymour Swade Lavoff, whose quiet post-war life changes with the onset of the turbulent 60s. Moreover, a stab in the back was from his own daughter, who had become an ardent follower of a group engaged in political terror. The topic of fatherhood is particularly important to McGregor. I have all this experience with girls. I have 4 daughters. I know intimately that relationship. I know what it feels like to be the father of a girl. It made me empathize with the Swede a lot when I read the script for the first time. Alas, critics felt that the film did not convey all the intricacies of the book. The Rotten Tomatoes website verdict read, American Pastoral finds debuting director Ewan McGregor's reach exceeding its grasp, with a well-intentioned Philip Roth adaptation that retains the form, but little of the function of its source material. However, if we forget about the book, then we can say with confidence that McGregor, as a director and leading actor, very emotionally and accurately conveyed the tragedy of a father who lost touch with his daughter. Philip Roth himself was quite positive about the film, which of course was a big relief for McGregor. The very next day, after finishing the sound mixing on the film, McGregor went to shoot the sequel to Trainspotting. The film is based on the sequel to the book by Irvin Welsh. Danny Boyle had expressed his wish to make it back in the mid-2000s, but decided to wait for the actors to grow old. "I want them to look ravaged by the passing of time," the director explained. By the time Boyle got to work on the sequel, their relationship with McGregor had finally improved. "It was a lot to put behind us, and it had taken 20 years to do it. It's a great shame we didn't work together for all those years." But despite the hatchet being buried, McGregor had some doubts about whether he wanted to direct the sequel. He didn't like Welsh's second book as much as the first. "I wasn't touched by it in the same way, and I didn't want anything to tarnish the film. No one wants to make a shite sequel." But the actor was bribed by a talentedly written script, and he agreed. In the story, the protagonist has been hiding from his past and old friends for 2 decades, but now he is returning home and he will have to confront them face to face. The new film doesn't try to copy its predecessor. Its pace matches the more mature age of its main characters.
There's a lot of that feeling in the movie, that sort of search for the future through the past. There's a nostalgia in it that I think you're right in saying earlier wouldn't have existed if we'd made the film earlier. You know, it's taken 20 years to have this beautiful weight of looking back at our youth through these characters, and as people who played them, looking at our own, which seems quite far away now, you know, sadly.
The landmark reunion ended up receiving generally positive reviews, but it could neither surpass nor reach the level of the first part. The same year, McGregor again showed his talent as a vocalist, playing the role of the charming Lumiere in Disney's film Beauty and the Beast.
They are coming, final checks everyone. Too sweet? No, you don't.
The actor also played in the 3rd season of the TV series Fargo. In the center of the plot was the story of the brothers Emmett and Ray Stussy. They were incredibly different. One of them was the successful, well-maintained king of Minnesota's parking lots. The other one was a battered, stocky parole officer. But McGregor played them both with equal talent. He successfully played up the noticeable physical contrast between the brothers, giving them completely different habits and facial expressions. The challenge is making sure they're both different and believable people, and the truth is that they feel very different when I'm playing them, so that's good and helpful. The role of the Stussy brothers brought him the Golden Globe and the first high-profile scandal in his entire career in Hollywood. On the set, McGregor met actress Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who played the girlfriend of one of his characters. Unexpectedly for everyone, the on-screen romance grew into something more. Once the paparazzi caught the actors kissing, and sometime later, McGregor announced a divorce with Eve Mavrakis after 22 years of marriage. The public sharply condemned the actor, especially after the rumor that Eve found out about her husband's infidelity from the tabloids, where they placed the same picture of McGregor and his colleagues. But there is also a version according to which the actor's marriage began to burst at the seams even before meeting Winstead. Allegedly, McGregor stopped living with his wife even before that very photo appeared in the press. Be that as it may, Winstead could not stand that huge amount of hate and even broke up with the actor for a while, but after a while, the couple got back together. The divorce proceedings between McGregor and Mavrakis took almost 2.5 years. Eve sued her ex-husband for half of the fees earned, which was about $22 million. The couple's eldest daughter reacted very painfully to her parents' divorce and her father's new romance, calling the actor's new passion a piece of garbage. She later apologized for her words, saying that she had acted foolishly. Meanwhile, Ewan's acting career did not stand still. In 2018, 2 projects with his participation were released. The romantic sci-fi movie Zoe received low ratings. The film that followed, Christopher Robin, on the contrary, was received very warmly by critics. This is a touching and a bit sad story about the grown-up friend of Winnie the Pooh.
That's very exciting. Yeah, it's nice. It's nice to take someone that we know iconically like that, like a young... I've done it the other way. In the Star Wars films, I took an older character who was iconic and tried to play him as a younger man, and this time it's the reverse.
The following year, McGregor appeared as a grown-up Danny Torrance in Stanley Kubrick's The Shining sequel, Dr. Sleep. Actually, the actor is not a big fan of horror films. He watched The Shining only out of a desire to get acquainted with the unconditional classics of cinema, and read the book after the script. Despite that, McGregor was able to outcast many famous actors such as Chris Evans, Jeremy Renner, and Matt Smith, and get King's blessing. The film received positive reviews, although it grossed modestly at the box office compared to other King adaptations. After that, McGregor appeared in Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker, again as a cameo. While the audience enjoyed playing the actor in cinemas, McGregor himself went on another trip with his constant friend Charlie Berman. That time, they made their way from Ushuaia in Argentina through South and Central America to Los Angeles in 100 days. A series about their adventures called Long Way Up was released in 2020. In Birds of Prey the same year, McGregor played the role of a violent, self-obsessed crime lord against whom Harley Quinn battles. The image of a charming antagonist brought the actor several nominations and awards. In 2020, it was also announced that McGregor will voice the main character in the stop-motion animated musical fantasy film Pinocchio, directed by Guillermo del Toro and Mark Gustafson. One of McGregor's most notable projects is the Halston miniseries about the life of designer Halston, who became world famous in the 1970s. Halston is a cult figure of the time. He dressed Jacqueline Kennedy and Lauren Bacall, hung out with big stars like Liza Minnelli, Andy Warhol, and Mick Jagger. The story of his life is strongly associated with the glitter of spotlights, drugs, and promiscuity. McGregor was unaware of Halston before he was offered the project, but when he saw a photo of Halston and people from his circle, the actor felt that he wanted to tell that story. And I could tell instantly from the photographs I wanted to play him. Just something about the way he holds himself, something in his eyes. To understand his character, McGregor carefully studied old interviews and backstage videos of Halston's fashion shows.
So he's backstage, he's got a drink in his hand and a cigarette, but he's really having a good time. And there's obviously some cute guy filming him because he's so flirty with the guy behind the camera. And I love seeing that, and I love seeing with his girls. He was just so fun, you know. He really enjoyed their company. He liked doing what he was doing. And so there was a very serious side to him in front of the camera, but I was always trying to find that backstage naughty version of him, you know.
He also learned sewing from a costume designer and even tried to make his own pants. I looked at the trousers that I owned, I was turning them inside out and just trying to figure it out, said the actor. He made the first pocket and was really impressed with himself. But then when he put in the second pocket, he realized one was on the outside and one was on the inside. When those who knew Halston personally heard who would play him, they were a bit surprised. The image of a secular lion, a talented designer, didn't fit in with McGregor's appearance. But having seen the series, most were delighted. The actor really managed to convey the habits and character of his hero. Critics also noted McGregor's acting. For his role, he received an Emmy Award and was nominated for a Golden Globe. In 2021, McGregor and Winstead had a son. The daughter of the actor Clara told about the happy event in her social networks, and that suggested that in recent years, McGregor still managed to improve relations with his older daughters. Another daughter of Ewan, Esther, gave the boy the name Laurie. After Obi-Wan Kenobi sent Anakin Skywalker on the big screen to fry in lava, the Star Wars universe began to be actively replenished with new films and series. For a long time, when asked if McGregor would like to return to the Jedi mantle, the actor didn't say anything specific, but only smiled mysteriously and replied that he was open to suggestions. And so, in August of 2019, at the Disney D23 event, Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy, along with McGregor, announced a new series about Obi-Wan Kenobi. The show takes place 10 years after the events of Star Wars Episode 3: Revenge of the Sith. I'm really excited about it. Maybe more so than the first ones because I'm older. I just turned 50, and I'm just in a much better place. On the set of the prequel trilogy, McGregor wasn't exactly thrilled about having to play in front of a blue background all the time. There's not something to dig into the dialogue that can satisfy you when there's no environment there. It was quite hard to do, the actor recalled. He was probably thrilled to learn that the Kenobi series, like The Mandalorian, would use stagecraft technology. A background is projected onto the screen, which makes it easier for the actors to navigate the locations.
Find the happy accident that gives you the perfect shot. Being able to see the actors point at things and see what they're looking at was pretty transformative. It gave everybody context, with the added benefit that if you want to move a mountain from there to there, you can do it instantly.
You could switch between the Iceland location to the desert location, all within the same day of shooting.
During his long career, McGregor managed to play many diverse, dissimilar characters and gain recognition from the film community. And we wish him even more new, successful projects. However, for some of his fans, he will forever remain exactly Obi-Wan Kenobi, one of the most popular Star Wars heroes. By the way, if you love this movie universe, you can click on the icon that appeared on your screen and find out about the craziest Star Wars theories. Some of them are as absurd as possible, but some theories really have a right to exist. Why did Kenobi hide Luke on his father's home planet? What secret is Chewbacca keeping? And what is the secret of Han Solo's luck? Follow the link and watch. It was the Biographer with you. Don't forget to like this video. See you soon, young Padawan, and may the Force be with you.